Hello everyone. This is a video overview introducing Unit 2 and the paper at the center of it. And so the very first file that you'll see when you click into the unit is something that you actually need to print out and have handy. We are going to be working on a guided research paper on the subject of fear. You're not going to do any outside research. I will provide all sources to you in a curated pool, and you'll have an opportunity to choose the sources and the prompt that speaks to you the most. So we have 3 topics to choose from. One is to write a documented essay that shows how we can manage or overcome limiting fears. This is probably the easiest, most straightforward topic to choose, so I highly recommend considering that for many students. Another option is to write a documented essay that reveals what we can learn from our fears. This is probably the next best option in terms of ease of use. And then the last one is more open-ended, where you can write a documented essay that develops a different thesis, subject to my approval, on the subject of fear. But it has to be something that can be produced that draws on the sources that I give you. So you're not doing any outside research. You're only drawing on the resources that I'm sharing with the class. By the time it's all said and done, our research paper will be 6 pages in length. That's only a couple of pages more than the first paper you did, which was the literacy narrative. The final draft and all other drafts do have to be submitted in Blackboard before the deadline in order to receive credit. And the number of sources we're using is 6. At least 3 of these have to be print sources. So as you'll see in just a moment, I have a Padlet with our list of options there, and that's what you will choose from. So let's take a look at that next. This is the Fear Unit Padlet, and there's another copy of the assignment sheet here, but we also have some resources here. I highly recommend when you click into this that you come over here to the little arrow and click on that so that it opens in another window. You can see better. And so I've got some best practices and suggestions over here. Number 1, um, once you settle on the sources that you're going to use, you're going to want to print those out. Later, I'll talk about how you can make the transcripts for the videos that you pick. So if we look over here, there's another copy of the assignment sheet in this column. If you want to see that, you would just click on it. In this column, I have videos from the TED website, and TED stands for Technology, Entertainment, and Design, and it's a really famous website where they have people from all over the world and all walks of life, from art, music, engineering, you name it, pretty much any subject under the sun. Highly inspirational videos. They're usually short and very high interest. And all the videos that I have here have something to do with fear. And so part of what you're going to be doing is looking at these videos and choosing which 3 do you want to use. And you'll also be looking at the print column, the articles, and considering which 3 you want to use there. So you'll have 3 videos, 3 articles. Now you might be wondering why I have 2 columns with this same exact videos in them. These over here are from the TED website, but there are certain things that we'll do with them that don't work well with the URL that comes from the TED website. But all TED videos that are on their website, they have a corresponding video that's got a YouTube link. It's the same video, but the link is just a lot easier to work with for some certain things. And so I've got that there when we have those workflows. So a big part of what you're doing this first week is you're just exploring the assignment sheet. And if you already have one that like appeals to you, then you can start with that. And you can say, okay, well, I'm kind of gravitating toward this one. And then you start looking for the sources that you think would lend themselves best to showing strategies of ways that we can manage or overcome our limiting fears. So that would be the focus if you're choosing this one. If you're choosing number 2, you would be looking for the videos and the sources and trying to glean, well, what's the lesson to be learned here? What can we learn about ourselves, or what can we learn about fears or our responses to them from these various videos? So the answers to these questions or to these prompts will constitute the research for the paper. Now, for the third one, if you were going to do the open-ended option, that really requires that you've kind of explored everything and you're doing some deeper thinking so that you could see, well, what other possibilities are there for me to have a focal point for the thesis? So, again, in terms of order of ease, number 1 is easiest, number 2 is next, and number 3, it's not that it's harder, but it's just more of a challenge because you would have to come up with a thesis that would fit with the sources that I have provided. So those are the first few things that you need to do in the unit is pick a prompt and pick some sources to start reading. And ultimately, you're going to end up watching more videos and reading more articles than you actually use, but you're trying to whittle it down so that you can choose them. So I'm going to pause the video for a moment so I can open up another tab, and I'm going to show you some other things that will help you do that. Okay. One of the things that I want to show you is one of my favorite AI tools, and I'm going to go ahead and click in. Let me go ahead and minimize the studio and minimize the sources. So this is one of the articles that is on the Padlet, and I downloaded it. And NotebookLM is an AI chatbot that is similar in some ways to ChatGPT and the others, but it's also very different in that instead of it relying on its training data, it only draws from the sources that you upload it. So in many ways, it's safer than using a regular chatbot because it's not relying on training data. It's only looking at what you've uploaded it. So this is never going to be a substitute for reading an article or watching a video, but it's got many, many use cases. And the use case we're talking about right now is when you've got a research paper to do, and in a situation like this where you have a curated pool, you might want to get a sense of what each one is about and get an overview to kind of decide which ones you're most interested in actually watching or reading first. So this is the article that I downloaded, and I went to the Padlet over here, and it's this article right here. And this is a foundational article. It's really good, and it establishes the problem of fear. The fact that it's based on the premise that we often get it wrong when it comes to fear, and the underlying thesis is that sometimes we don't fear the things that we should, and sometimes we're afraid of things that we shouldn't be. So it's all about us miscalculating the the odds of danger in certain circumstances. Sometimes we're overconfident. We feel comfortable when we're driving a car because we feel like we're in control. Um, and then there are other times where um, maybe we're not concerned about things that we should be. And it's a really good article, and it's a good one to choose for your paper. But what it does automatically the minute you upload the source, and when you first go into a notebook and create notebook, it kind of prompts you like, what do you want to upload? You can upload files, YouTube videos, you can connect it to your Google Drive, you can use copy text, and so on. But let me go back to the one that I'm in, and it gives you kind of a short summary. So that's the first thing that's kind of useful, is it gives you a big overview of what the article is about. This middle part right here is where the chat can take place. So you can actually have conversations about a text or about a YouTube video or a source or even a chapter book in an online book. You can interact with it about that. Now, obviously, if you haven't read it or seen it, you can't really interact with it much. That's more of what you would do for the most part after you've read it. But if you're trying to figure out which ones you're going to look at or trying to get a sense of what they're about, you can also go over here to the studio and you see all these buttons over here. You can create an audio overview that you could listen to while you walk to class or while you're cleaning the house or while you're driving to work. Um, there's a video overview that you can create, a mind map. You can create slide decks, which can also be downloaded into PowerPoint or as PDF. Can do flashcards, reports, quizzes, infographics, and data tables. Well, now, obviously, when you're just previewing a source, you don't necessarily want to do all of these things, but since some of you may be new to this tool, you might want to play with some of them. So I've already done some ahead of time because it takes a little bit of time for them to generate, but I'm going to show you what they are and how they're useful and which ones I think you should consider using when you're playing around and trying to figure out which of the articles you want to read first, which of the videos, and it's going to kind of help you narrow your choices down and maybe eliminate the ones that you don't want to. Well, one of my favorite ones is the mind map. It's kind of like a way to outline what is there. And sometimes if there's a lot of things, you can see that there's something there up top that's kind of off the screen. So you might have to change the size of the screen. There we go. So you can see it all. So the article is called 10 Ways We Get the Odds Wrong. So if we come up here and we click on these things, you see it branches out. Like, what's this section about? It gives kind of the concepts, and it's just like a kind of a visual mind map of the concepts. That can be useful to come back to later after you've read the article as well. All right, so we've got the mind map. One of the other good ones to use is the slide deck one, and it actually creates the slide deck. And there can be mistakes on here, but um, there's a way to edit that. So it makes this, and if we go through it, we'll see kind of different highlights. And so these are going to be, some of the different main claims. This one says we fear predators, but not machines. But in reality, we're probably a lot less likely to encounter snakes in the modern world than we are to get hit by a big truck. So that's what the article means by sometimes we misplace our fears um, relative to the danger that they pose to us. So you get the idea. You can go through and you can also customize the style of these things, which is pretty cool. So you can create PowerPoints. You notice the pencil that's over each one of these. When you click on the pencil, that means that you can customize it. So if I were going to create an infographic, I can choose the level of detail I want to focus on. I can choose the language I want it in. I can choose, do I want it landscape, portrait, square? And you can describe what you want it to look like, if you want it to be in manga style, if you want it to be in a comic book style. If you're into art and you have the vocabulary to know what the different art styles are, you can do that as well. You can create things that look professionally corporate in terms of infographics and things like that. Or you can create pretty much any style that you can imagine. If you don't put anything, it just chooses for you, which is fine, but it's kind of fun sometimes to play around with the different styles. I didn't create one of every single one of these, but I'm just going to click on this one for a few seconds. This is a video overview. Okay, so you get the idea here. It's kind of better than a PowerPoint in some ways because it's narrated and it focuses on the main claims. And when you are clicking on these things, and like let's say if you come back, a lot of times you can make better infographics after you've read something than before. If you do it before, it's kind of luck of the draw because you really don't know what to have it focus on. But let's say you decide to use this later and there are certain aspects of the article that you really want to focus on, then you can create things there to help you focus on those. And then you can also, once you've come back and read it, now you can have a conversation with yourself and the text by asking various questions and having an actual conversation. So it's not just necessarily a Q&A, but you can have questions and answers. So let me just show a couple of the infographics, and then I think you get the idea. Right now we're not doing a whole lot with it, but using, maybe I recommend, making a couple of infographics for the sources that you're thinking about looking at, and maybe doing a slide deck and a video overview. You can kind of experiment. You probably don't need to do some of these others, or you may just want to use the summary feature. You may just want to do the summary feature. You may want to ask it questions like, you know, related to maybe a prompt that you're interested in on the assignment sheet. But let's look at a couple of the infographics. They can be pretty good. Keep in mind that they can have some details in them because they're taking key concepts and they are visualizing them. So this one is the one that has the medium amount of detail in it, and usually those are accurate. Usually you won't see typos in those, so those are pretty neat and useful. I think this is one that may have a little bit more detail. Yes, so this one has more detail. So if we probably scrutinize this, sometimes when you have the ones with more detail, there might be little mistakes. So you can see one over here, weigh risks. So there's an E there that shouldn't be there. So they're still usually pretty accurate and enough to be useful in a big picture sense. And sometimes you make the super detailed one and there's no mistakes, but just be aware that sometimes there can be mistakes, especially in the big ones. But it's usually like a typo because I would imagine it's pretty hard to make these kind of things from, say, a document or a video. Last thing I want to show you before I wrap this and let you start playing with it is, let's see, do we have one in here? Okay, so I've already saved a YouTube URL for one of the TED Talks that you could choose from. And so that's what you do. You paste it in there and it comes up with kind of a brief overview. Keep in mind that this summary may not be capture everything, but it's going to cover the main gist. And then you could come over here and maybe do a couple of visualizations, or if you wanted to interact with it about this, you could. But this kind of gives you a sense of what it's about so that when you go back over to the Padlet, then maybe you decide, oh yeah, I want to watch this video, get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Now, granted, you don't have to use that to do that. You can just kind of dive in and explore them all. But I would like for you to experiment with NotebookLM a little bit. And the use case we're doing right now is as a preview to kind of see what something's about so that you can narrow down what you're gonna look at. Later we'll look at use cases of how you can use it to dive more deeply into a text. So any of our AI use will never be something that is just going to make this shortcut that's going to take all the work out of something, but there are some workflows that will streamline what you're doing, make it easier to do, or make it easier to get to where you need to be. So this is a really fun tool, practical, and there's lots and lots of use cases for it. All right, so that's it. That's a wrap. I probably will have an assignment of some kind for this just to make sure that everybody has played with it a little bit. But right now your task is to look at the assignment sheet, pick your prompt at some point this week, and start looking through the sources. Remember that the TED videos are duplicated and the ones that you're playing with in NotebookLM need to come from over here. So if I were going to click on this one, I'm going to stop that right there, but I would need to come here and click it on YouTube so I can get the URL. Let me stop that. And then I would come and get the share link and grab that to pop it in there. All right, that's it. That's a wrap. Y'all have a good one and reach out if you have any questions.